Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where in the world that you're joining me from. Thank you so much for jumping in. Today is another masterclass day, which is wonderful. Um, Really excited to get into this one, a bit more focused in terms of the job and job management side, time and scheduling and milestones. I have a bit of a sneak peek for us today, which is also really exciting in terms of the beta release of the scheduling tool. So we'll be able to touch on that today as well. So we'll just wait a moment or two for everyone to slowly join in. We've got quite a few booked in today. Hopefully everyone's got their coffee ready and good to go. You'll note there that Jimmy from the Blue Rock Digital team was due to join us today, but is feeling a little bit under the weather. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to listen to my voice all day. So I'll try and be, as always, if you've joined me for one of my previous webinars, I do have some of the worst dad jokes known to man. So I do apologize. I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible. I guess I really enjoy these webinars, and please, one of the things just to kick off in housekeeping, I do love as much Q&A as possible. We're scheduled in for 45 minutes today, so I will be trying to make as much time as possible to go through Q&A. I'll also include a link towards the back end of the session where you can actually book some time in with me directly. So that's an offer to meet with me one-on-one. Certainly in these webinars, they're great to touch over some general questions, some general ideas and concepts. And certainly from myself, I really like to try and impart as much best practice from my perspective as possible, but there's always an opportunity in the offer there to book in with me directly. So there'll be a QR link that I'll show just in a moment. So we might get started. I think we've got, yeah, it looks like we've got quite a few people that have slotted in, which is lovely. So again, my name is Dan Roggenkamp. I am the founder of Set Up My Systems. Jimmy from Blue Rock Digital, as mentioned, doesn't feel too well today, wasn't able to join me. So we're just going to be having a more intimate session today, which is always good. Today, we've got quite a few things to work through in terms of from a general session plan and overview. We'll be going through sort of the job management key features and filters, just touching on some of the little key things that I see being really, really handy and useful just from that pure job manager screen. This particular session today is really tailored more towards a beginner to intermediate perspective. So if you are a more advanced user of WorkflowMax, we will touch on some concepts there, some best practice suggestions, but more advanced questions, please feel free to ask away. And when we get to Q&A, I'll make sure that we can answer it. Allocating staff. So this is always a really, really interesting one in allocating staff, particularly how it relates to staff permissions. And so I'm really looking forward to going into that in a little bit of detail and sort of how that works. Time entry itself, we all know the basics around time entry, but touching on some of the specific feature-related items, particularly when we're allocating staff to projects or tasks within a project, what's the impact that staff will see in the different modules that they can enter time in. Staying on top of jobs, so touching on some of the reports, including some of the in-job default reports, our print job reports, such as the job financial statement summary, as well as one or two of the summary reports that can be handy as well. We'll touch on milestones today. So particularly with the scheduling beta being released, the guys have been working really, really hard to get that in parity with the old to the new. So that scheduling page, if anyone used that, the good news is that will be due to release soon. You can contact the team directly and ask to be included in the beta testing and the beta version. So please, if you are interested in that, please just send an email through to the support channel. And then from there, we can obviously follow up and get you added to the beta program. So as mentioned, the scheduling tool, we'll have a quick look at that. I've got early sneak peek access, and towards the end, we'll be allowing enough time for Q&A. So just touching on some final housekeeping items. So again, WorkflowMax website's a really good place for finding all your associated resources. A recording of today's session, so if you do have to jump out, will be listed in the masterclass. I did one again last week on the speed dating, getting up and running in 30 minutes. So if you are somebody that's new to WorkflowMax and you want some of the handy hints and getting up and running quickly, if that's you, please feel free to jump in. There's also some other masterclasses done by a beautiful partner community. Guys, we've got such a wonderful partner community here, and there's a lot of really good plethora. There's a plethora of information there, particularly with the likes of Josh and Ars and Chris and Mark as well. So quite a bit to come there. Just as a reminder as well, when we come to the dashboard, there is our resource center that's available. We've obviously got our contact support and feature request icons just on the right-hand side. Academy. access to the webinars, and what most of you will be really interested in is that product roadmap as well. So we can see at the moment that job and staff schedule view is in the beta. I'm talking to quite a few people at the moment about the HubSpot integration as well, so watch this space. That is coming. Again, put in a support request if you'd like to have a look at the beta version if you are using HubSpot or think about using HubSpot. I know there's one or two clients that I'm working with closely who are considering enrolling into the beta shortly. So that would be really, really, really exciting. So I guess to kick off, guys, the basics and fundamentals around job management, and then we'll start deep diving a little bit more as we go. So trading straight to our general summary view. Just as a reminder, these toggles are really important in terms of being able to isolate and review what you want to look at. Now, not all of you know that in our user settings, we can actually allocate particularly visibility for users in around summaries of all active jobs and my jobs. So if you don't know, in the user settings, there is a direct setting that's aligned with people being able to see all jobs or just the jobs that they're meant to. So again, when you are building your staff roles and profiles, I'd really recommend leaning heavily on this roles feature. This roles features will allow you to build that workflow, build in that consistency and approach for the different staff levels that you have. And at the moment, we've got administrator and job manager. If I just go into the job manager view, though, that specific job manager view that we're looking at and thinking about is this job manager. So full access or view assigned. That's a really important one to be conscious of, because if it's only view assigned jobs, that means that staff will only be able to see my jobs. They won't be able to go through all the active jobs and everything else. So that's one thing there from day one when you are building your role profiles, is to be really, really conscious of. So great, as we go. Again, I'm an administrator view at the moment, so I can do quite a few things. I can see all jobs starting today, due this week, and what's been overdue. Keep in mind these filter options on the right-hand side are particularly handy, as well as probably to note, and this is something that a lot of people actually do forget, really small point, but this little icon on the right-hand side, you'll note here that as I've scrolled to the left of screen, I can't actually see it. So I often get questions asked in the different pages and views. So keep in mind, in a lot of the views in the new WorkflowMax, we've got this beautiful ability to really customize and showcase what it is particular to that summary view we want to see. So for me, I've essentially turned on client job name status, start and due date. But one of the cool parts about this update is the fact is, as a job manager and looking at jobs, I can denote any of the really key priority fields. So these are all custom fields that have been embedded in the job. If I want to at any stage, I can add these in. I can reprioritize them so that my particular view is updated. So this is really, really handy, particularly if you are a job manager looking to get better visibility of what's what. You can see it from there. I know, particularly in the old, that was a major part of feedback, is just to be able to see things like category and some of those custom fields, particularly to your industry and workflow. That's a really, really handy thing to go through. So again, my jobs as well, as we circle through, you'll notice here that that summary view changes. You'll note that scroll button down the right-hand side. Again, you've got the ability to customize and select which particular columns and the order of those columns. Access to all jobs, again, with a filter view applied. Calendar is something that in particular that people have started using a lot more now that the feature's obviously been released. We can see here that this has been color coded. The UI has been updated since the old. We get to see things like obviously our milestones color coded in a pink purple, whatever color that is. Color grades. I'm not in creative design, guys. I'm in business growth and obviously in looking at systems and systems optimization and some of the other key project items as well. This is really going to be driven by your access. So the jobs assigned to me, jobs I'm managing in all jobs. This is obviously part of what the team will be continuing to build out as we go. Staff allocation. So this is one of the ones which I think, again, really needs its own separate session. But if we look at that staff allocation at the moment, everyone's pretty open. This page really for me represents how busy we are in a 2 to 3 week period. It highlights at the moment that only me as Dan Roggenkamp has a certain amount of hours associated in terms of jobs and roles. So we've got quite a lot of capacity across the group. Reoccurring jobs and schedule as well. So welcome everyone to a quick sneak peek on the schedulings page. We will be coming back to this in more detail, but this is part of that beta release. So again, if you want to sign up, let's have a bit of a look and go through from there. So jumping straight into a job, next item I really just want to go through in terms of that task and start to really bed down into the allocating of staff, and the time entry relationship as well. So let's jump straight into that. We've got our test job at the moment, and the wonderful team at AQ put together this detailed demo environment, which is really representing a digital creative agency. Any of the concepts that we discussed today is really applicable to any type of professional or non-professional services organization. There's a lot of takeaways that we can apply. So obviously scrolling down, from a task management perspective, we obviously need to be able to add a task to be able to do something with a task, such as put a time budget against it, allocate staff and a start and stop allocation. There was a question there around this scheduling beta release and what to do there. Just as a quick one, great question. Please feel free to put in the Q&A. We've got myself who will be answering questions as we go, but obviously the wonderful team at WorkflowMax. We've got David and Linnell in the background helping there. Signing up for the scheduling of beta, as mentioned, is just put in a support ticket requesting access to that beta, and the team will get you sorted. So that first step there in terms of allocating tasks. So you can see here that at the moment, this particular job has strategy, market research domestic, etc. We've got some time budgets in terms of estimated and actual time. Drawing attention, particularly as a job manager, and again, the theme today is really driving in that job manager theme. I want to see a set list of items, and maybe I want to include to-do items as well, and that's particularly important in terms of how I see it. Staff allocation, total, I'm happy with those selected columns. I hit next, so I can see those all filter through. And you'll notice there that these to-do items pre-populate. Now, just as a bit of a best practice reminder, think about when you're developing workflow, the use of job templates, particularly with to-do items, which we'll touch on in quite a bit of detail today, and comparison to to-do items versus milestones. To-do items are things that need to be ticked off or essentially actioned as a part of a task. They can also be pre-templated against your quote and job templates. So just as a quick reminder, so for those that don't know about it, quote and job templates are really the backbone of WorkflowMax. It can be used to build in a lot of automations and a lot of really smart items that will get you kicking along your workflow, depending on what it is exactly that you do. Now, in job templates itself, when we come in here, and if you haven't had a look at job templates, again, job templates can be used in a variety of applications. So if you think about it, a quote or job template can be applied when you're building a quote, because it pre-structures the standard quotes that you do, but it can also be used throughout your job workflow. So I've got a few organizations, professional services, that might have, say, 3 stages or phases to a job, say an engineer, and at each stage, they've got a reminder to actually apply a new job template, which essentially pre-populates a task with a set list to do items. And that's just a really smart way of thinking about how can we use some of the default features to build repeatable processes and embed those repeatable processes. So in this to-do item, for instance, I can plan. So do A, do B, hit save. Now, every time I apply that job template, that's actually going to apply that task as well as those to-do items to the job. You'll notice there that if I'd apply this particular template at the quote stage, there isn't a visible part within the quote to actually see the to-do items. So it's only that if and when that quote becomes a job that those will pre-populate that there. But that's just a really good thing to think about, is how your environment can actually actively use job templates. Obviously, as part of a digital agency, typically if we're doing something like a multifaceted project like this, we're doing a bit of strategy, we're doing some market research, we're providing keyword research, there might be a standard list of protocol items that you'll do whenever you do that task. So that's a really good one to keep in mind. So right from the beginning of your workflow, you can build in a quote template that has a checklist of items to do. So when it becomes a job, your staff can then see and action those. And I guess turning into a job as a job manager, if I've done that, and using the example of this particular project, we can see that I myself have been allocated to do 20 hours of strategy. I've got do A, B, C, D. Again, this is a demo environment, so we're not being too strict about exactly what's written in there. I can add additional items as a job manager. Add additional item to complete. Update, provide design brief. Hopefully there's a few creators in the room that are getting some ideas. Again, professional services or non-professional services of any type. It's around applying your workflow and the things that need to be actually to do in actions. Because now that I've done that, I can actually see in many respects that me as a user, I'm allocated this particular task and I've got these things to do. So if we deep dive into the task itself, there's a few extra items that we can do directly as administering this particular task. Now, this would be at task level allocation. So if I want to come in, add extra to-do items and schedule this would be the way to do it. Click into the task and then update anything that's needed. Sublabel, description, custom fields on a task. Now, this is a huge one, guys, and something that gets overlooked. We can, as per the old, embed custom fields on a task, and that's actually really handy, particularly when we go to the task manager view, which I'll show in just a moment. So keep that in mind. If you've got particular tasks with certain reporting categories or other fields that need to be captured, that task-based custom fields on a job is really, really, really powerful. Cool. So you see here that I've been allocated myself 20 hours. I might actually give Mark 5 hours. And what I'm going to do is put 15. You'll notice that because I put 5 on top of the 20, the time allocated to staff members doesn't meet the estimated time. This is asking me to refer back to what the total estimated time is based on what we didn't plan it before and make sure that aligns correctly. So we've got 15 and 5. So both Dan, myself, and Mark will be working respectively on this. And now we've been allocated. But then you'll notice at the top, there's this piece called scheduling information. Now, as a job manager, I can choose to schedule a start and completion time or end date against this particular task, or I can leave it open-ended. And that's when we look at the different levels of allocation. So if you think about WorkflowMax in terms of your particular business requirements, we can, as by default, apply staff to a job, but that next level down is applying staff to individual tasks within a project. The next level below that is allocating staff to particular tasks in a project, but then allocating a start date and a due date. So this is kind of going from very basic allocation at job level right down to the details that we see here. So something to really keep in mind is that you don't have to do all of this at once. You can just get started with the basics. In fact, when you use WorkflowMax in general, I really, really encourage you to think more broadly and then slowly embed more specifics. Accuracy versus convenience is something that I always drum on about when I'm doing sessions and talking about optimization of WorkflowMax. Start basic and go more deeper as we go. But for the moment, I know that this particular step one strategy is the first step of the job. If I'm an engineer, it might be prelim design, for instance. It might be something else. I've gone, great. I know that the client needs this done by the 28th. I've got 15 hours I'll allocate and 5 hours respectively there. Cool. Now that I've added that, that's all been updated. Now you can see, as mentioned to my point before, we haven't allocated all the other steps. This might be a project where we really dependent. Task one, which is strategies dependent, market research is dependent on strategy being done and vice versa. They might not be necessarily dependent, but we just might not know who's doing what when and when they're actually due from a client perspective. If I've got a basic starting point, though, for instance, if I know that the particular stage is who I want doing them, or the particular task, I should say, there's actually a really handy button here called staff allocation. Now, it doesn't pre-present the start and due dates of tasks, but you can see here, when we look at the staff allocation, it's pre-pulling everyone that's been allocated to this job by default. And I've already put in 1 or 2 people. You can see here that this is the task I was working on before strategy. It's got 15 hours here and 5 hours there. Quite often as a starting point, before we get to scheduling tasks, as in the start date and the end date, we actually start by getting people to think about scheduling by just allocating the staff to the individual tasks. So me, got 8 and 2. We don't know who's doing this one yet. We don't know who's doing this one yet. Maybe keyword research. I know that Ash, being the legend that she is, will be doing the 10 hours there. I'm sure Ash can do keyword design or keyword research. And then again, hit save and we can go from there. And again, this is around building out based on your workflow and workflow requirements. The great part here, though, is you don't have to do everything. It's not like you have to allocate all staff, or some tasks might have a start and an end date. You're not really tied to having an all or nothing approach. You can just get started by thinking about what are the next stages of a project and what needs to be allocated. Again, this is all pre-populating now and coming through. I can see all that information as a job manager, but also I can see that now specifically as somebody who's actioning these tasks. And this is where the task view really can come into play, particularly with the way that the screen's presented the new. I really love the sort of the visibility that we get. So for me, I being a job manager with a correct admin facility, I can see my task, but I can also toggle to all tasks as well. And again, just drawing the attention there, just to the right-hand side, we've got this really cool toggling view. We can go in, associate what we need to, and have a look from there. We can say if we're looking at all tasks due within a week, this is really, really handy. Again, thinking about that job manager perspective, I might come in here and go, what's due within the next week? And, or importantly, what's actually unscheduled? Great. Work through what's been unscheduled. Click in, allocate staff member. You've got the ability to complete tasks on bulk. So if something's already been done, you can complete them. When you're completing a task, this is a reminder, it stops people adding time against that. So that means it's locked off, it's not visible in their time entry view. That's a really good handy way of, as a task, as a job manager, being able to quickly make updates in bulk. You can see again what's unscheduled, and you can schedule out these, obviously looking through the different options and see what's been worked on. For myself specifically, I might want to see what I've been allocated to and what I'm working to, and you'll see that there the update has been done in terms of market research. I can see what is being completed versus not completed, what's due in the next week, what's due in the next 4 weeks, and what's due in the next 3 months. And this is all administrable, by the way. Is that a word, administrable? I'll just run with it for today, guys. Bear with me. This is all administrable. Hopefully there's no literature geeks in the webinar that can correct me really soon. But this is really, really interesting because from this particular page view, we can do bulk updates in one. We can add additional to-do items. We can tick things off. We can mark things as completed. And again, all within that schedule view. That item A, just to point out, that's actually one of the custom task fields. So if you think about Job Manager in your particular workflow, what's really interesting here is you might have task-specific fields that you've embedded related to that job that will denote exactly additional information, whether it's the type of work that's being done, the type of engagement. You can think quite broadly in terms of the application of that custom field on the task within the job to get really specific. And that's where a lot of information share can actually be generated, particularly when we look at the difference between milestones and to-do items. Think about to-do items really specifically as the to-do things. Thank you very much. The team just confirm that administrable is a word according to dictionary.com. So we probably should get a reference from dictionary.com because I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate either. Dictionary.com, not very reliable all the time. But the key part here, guys, is that task to do item is very specific to the individual that can be allocated to a task and against that task, obviously. When we think of milestones, I want everyone to think about milestones as global project information. Everyone can see it. Everyone needs to be aware of it. And that's how you treat it. So if I'm a digital agency, I might have milestones that are related to the overall project and job delivery. It might be account specific. Whereas a to-do item on a task should be used for very more specific items that need to be done at a particular point in time against a particular task and be responsible to the people that we allocate to it. So there's probably a few different applications. And again, the offer is at the end of the session, book in 30 minutes with me. I'm happy to give you some ideas. There's no right or wrong answer. But if you just think about chunking up a little bit, milestones, when we add a milestone to a job, very much that global job-based information. So I'll show you just exactly where that is as well. Come back to that particular job, which is, should just open it directly from that link. Again, guys, reminder as well, particularly from this My Task Summary screen, anything in green we can highlight over and jump straight into. So if I click on that green there, they'll take me to the job view. This particular button here, which relates to the task, will take us directly to that task and task admin. So coming in, again, milestones, think of that milestones. And again, with milestones, we can build notifications off. So think about when your workflow, we're talking about concepts such as imprinting to-do items against tasks in your job template. So when you apply a quote or apply a job template to a quote or apply a job template to a job, you're building in those repeatable business processes, those to-do items that can then be managed. And to-do items are great for checklists, particularly when we do repeatable things and need to action repeatable things on the jobs that we do. Milestones as well is part of that job template. So we can obviously add milestones ad hoc within the job, but we can also apply milestones through the use of job templates. So I've got an example even just of an engineer that I'm working with at the moment, and they've actually got a milestone job template based on the type of job they're doing. So they've actually broken it up into tasks with to-do items. So they'll have a job template for, say, water engineering or water infrastructure project. So when a water infrastructure project gets awarded, they'll apply the first template, which will pre-populate default milestones against that particular type of job, and also one that will pre-apply to-do items against tasks as well. And they'll actually have that as two separate job templates. And they've managed to turn that into a bouncing ball. They've also adding in another job template that once we get to task job completion, it's actually one that will add milestones and another task to-do items for accounts to finalize invoicing for those projects. So you can actually get quite dynamic in terms of how you can use job templates and particularly build out repeatable milestones. So again, this is coming back to me as a job manager. I've got access to see milestones. This is obviously permission based. We can hide or show this, similar to the other areas of the job and job management there as well. So hopefully there's some handy hints in that one, guys. Obviously, allocating staff is a really, really important one. I'll show you that scheduling beta view in just a moment. Now, the timesheet entry when allocating staff is one that really gets sometimes a little bit confusing, particularly if you're new to WorkflowMax, but there's some simple rules that I would like to apply just to really simplify. So similar to milestones to do items, what are they? Milestones are more generic, broader-based operational project requirements. To do items, let's think about that as the specific things that we need to do against a particular task, and then allocating those staff to do that task. And if we get and feel lucky, then maybe start applying start and due dates against those. So obviously keeping some of the concepts and themes simple. And then conversely, when we think about time entry, let's think about the different methods of adding time. So there's four methods really of adding time. So we've got the inbuilt application, which I encourage everyone to take a look at. If you think of sort of this particular view here, which is the timesheet widget, it replicates some of the similar features and visibility there in terms of that layout, that look and feel. We can log time in, we'll say 2 hours. And again, this view is really important. So touching on this in terms of from both the daily, the weekly view and the app, what this is doing, it's isolating the jobs that I've been allocated to and then prioritizing the tasks that I've been added to on those jobs. So there is one or two little nuances there, which we're going to go into in more detail in a moment. But by default, the app, the add daily timesheet view and the add weekly timesheet view is trying to get me really specifically focusing on the jobs that I should be adding time to. So I can see that these are the only 3 jobs that I've been allocated to. I can add some, obviously, annual leave. This is the only task within that job that I've been given access to. Now, the question I'm guarantee will come up is, I've got a job, I've allocated myself to a task, no other tasks have anyone allocated to, and I can add time still against everything. That's 100% correct. So if every task has been allocated to a person, it will very much lock down and only allow you to see the task in this view that you've been allocated to. If you've only been allocated, if the job holistically has only had 1 or 2 tasks or only one, as in not all tasks have been allocated to people, you'll still get a broader access and broader view, obviously based on your user settings as well. But because this particular internal job, everyone has been allocated to a task, the only task that I've been allocated to is annual leave. I can't see everything, even though I'm an admin. If I want to add time to this particular other task within this job, I'm going to have to log into the job and then add time within the timesheet tab, which I'll show in a moment. That's a really, really, really important one, guys. So again, conversely, if I go to add time specifically, I can only see these 3 jobs because that's the only jobs I've been allocated to. So this is what most of your end users will see, just the jobs they're allocated to. And then the next level down, if they've all been allocated, if every single task has been allocated, they'll only see the tasks that they've been allocated to within that. So again, keyword research applies that for me there. 4 hours in. Should put a timesheet note. Good. We can see the summary of what I've done. We can see then our weekly views. Let's come to the weekly view. And again, very much the same notion as before. Because of that scheduling as a job manager, I've got confidence now that the staff that have been allocated to the correct job can see the correct job. And then conversely from there, if we've allocated people within every task of that job, I can now see that I only can access the particular task that I should be able to see. So that internal job was definitely one of them. Obviously, if I go to keyword research, that's another example. Fruitful, I can see all of them. Again, because not every task has had staff allocated to it, I can be a little bit dangerous with this one. Yeah, it's already there. That's just saying that's already there on the list. So then again, we're pre-filling our week. We're hitting save as we go. And we're going from there. So the final step, again, so if you are a job manager, you've got access. There is that timesheet tab that you can see directly on a job. So we come just back up to the top. This is obviously user-based. So this is as a job manager and sort of with the right user permissions, we can add, again, essentially time across the board for this particular job and go from there. This is that kind of overarching view where we can make changes, add time. Again, really actually handy view as well for being able to review time across the board that's been allocated, and obviously be able to add time and adjust time there as required as well. Just a reminder that if you have what I have now, which is the only 10 items per page, keep in mind that I can go to my profile settings. It's just a bit of a handy hint again, and change that to 200. So top right-hand corner, come to DR, your little acronym for your first and last name will appear there, profile settings, change that to 200, hit save. And there we go. So what's next? So we've added time, daily, weekly view. Again, end user perspective, they'll see the jobs that they've been allocated to. And if we've gone the next level down, they'll see the tasks that they've allocated to with priority, particularly if all the tasks have been allocated across the in its entirety across the project. We can see here that the 200 items per page is coming up now as well, which is great. So up next, just being conscious of time, because I do want to make sure that we're staying very much on track today. So we've already touched on milestones, which is good. I do want to show the scheduling and then go through some Q&A items. But in terms of staying on top of jobs, there's a few reports that I just want to quickly show and go through. Again, reports are very much something that's very much a bespoke driver. Businesses will have their own particular things, particularly from a job management perspective. That's really important. Hopefully that first element of job management, which is really, really overlooked, I think, which is that task view. Perhaps now moving forward with confidence, we can look at some processes within our business in terms of looking at all tasks, scheduling these out in bulk, seeing the bulk completion features, using that as the initial method of, what's incomplete, but what's due in the next week, what needs to be scheduled, being able to have staff then be able to see their own tasks and be able to administer those tasks directly from that screen. That next step is really the other reports within that job level as a job manager that I would want to see. So coming through to the, some of the basics there, one of my favorite reports in the entire world is our job financial summary. As a job manager, this is really the benchmark and starting point of all the jobs that I do. And the reason is one of the most beautiful and powerful things about WorkflowMax is it gives us essentially two types of performance reporting. So no matter what type of industry you're in, no matter what type of application there is, in terms of your business, GP reporting versus WIP reporting is available. Now, let me explain really quickly. So estimated cost versus actual cost versus what's been invoiced. That's effectively our GP. So again, whilst this view for the job financial summary might not be your go-to report, this is really telling us all the data that's available to customize in the reports with our custom report table that we want. So we think estimated versus actual cost, what's billable, so what's the accumulated billable hour rate against the hours that have been worked, and what's been invoiced. So straight away, if I look at estimated versus actual, what's been invoiced, I know that at the moment I've effectively got a negative GP. I haven't invoiced that yet. Whilst there's a really handy thing telling us what the estimated profit it is down below, we need to invoice this job. So that's, again, coming back to that concept of GP. What did we estimate it was going to cost us? What did it actually cost us? And what did we invoice? The other one is very much our WIP reporting. So what did we quote the customer or think we were going to quote the customer? So if I'm doing a time and materials job, exactly the same. One of the things that I really love, so if you're not doing this in your business, this is one of the best practice things that I always recommend. No matter what type of job type you do, whether you're doing agreed pricing, time and materials, due and charge, whatever you call it, always start your job with a quote or always have a quote as part of your job. So some businesses start recording time, particularly if they're an engineer, for instance, they'll start with a job first so they can add time against a task that's called, say, business development or proposals. That's completely fine because you want to capture that total time spent against the job holistically. But at some stage, we do need to raise a quote so we're getting that budget versus actuals in. It's one of the strongest parts about WorkflowMax. So coming back to that point then, This job could be a do and charge, or time and materials, or it could be a fixed quoted price. Either way, we've got a budget in place. We think that we're going to invoice, should be able to invoice 2 grand. We've only, in terms of accumulated time billable, have $180. And conversely, for our costs, we budgeted 1040 in terms of quoted amount. At the moment, we can have accumulated and can bill that full amount. So that's showing us what effectively our write on or write off figure is. So we've had a few sessions on WIP. So that's obviously a big conversation itself. But in terms of looking at the custom reporting, that can give you your first insight that as a job manager, what's most important to you, because they're two different types of performance reporting that can tell us different things. This job summary view also tells us and gives us a nice summary of in terms of estimate versus hours, in terms of actual hours, not from a cost basis, and also looks in terms of efficiency. So at the moment, in terms of Mark and Millie, they're being very, very effective in terms of this job at the moment. And then, from there on, as we go through that, we'll see that estimated versus hours breakdown and what efficiency percentage is, and also that time to be invoiced. So again, this is really useful, of course, from job managers that have time and material jobs that need to have visibility there, but also in terms of our quoted jobs, what is billable in terms of what is that utilized time against the job. One of the other reports I really like, just to get you started, so particularly if you're relatively new to reporting, some of the standard reports around the job time detail report. And again, these filter views are really important. So running this one, we can see that annual leave, I've had 4 hours I've run against that. My user profile, so me adding time, I actually haven't put a rate in as a staff rate, so I need to update that. As of the 17th and the 18th, I made that update today, so you can see that that rate has then pre-populated into that line, so I can see what my rate is. And then as a starting point, that job time detail report, particularly as an end of month process. And again, thinking about your end of month reporting is one of the really strong drivers here. These standard reports can be a really good benchmark for those. Your staff time summary report. So what is, again, based on the individual staff, you'll see that's listed below. You've got, again, the job summary, the task, non-billable, the amount, the billable, and the amount there that's pre-populated. So that's really starting to get you thinking about what are those standard reports that sit there. Obviously, custom reports is very much a big focus area for your end of month reporting or reporting as you go. And there's always updates being made there. So that's just a really good starting point. Reporting is very much one of those ones that are bespoke to businesses. Again, if you have questions for reporting, happy to jump on a call, which I'll show the link shortly. Milestones we've touched on. Again, just a reminder, really emphasizing that thing, just in terms of key takeaways for today. Milestones, think of whole project, global notifications that need to be ticked, marked off. A good internal workflow practice that I often talk to customers about is thinking about milestones being accountable based on the job manager or the client manager that's been allocated to the job. And then tying into the scheduling side, everyone. So the scheduling feature, obviously, in terms of what it's been built to do, is currently in beta, is being built to match like-for-like functionality with old. So if we look at that scheduling view, one of the biggest changes that is sitting there is really the kind of the UI interface there. So UI interface, the ability to make changes directly in that. So I've just put in our particular job schedule based on what is due to be completed. So I can see that what is the current job schedule for this month. So the only job that I've allocated as part of this view is this particular strategy and brand project. So this toggle again, this month, last month, this year, whatever's particularly due, we can pull that through and then update and essentially go through. So if we had other jobs that were due in this time period, that would also pre-populate, pre-fill. So again, for those that are familiar with it from the old, there's a few things there that should look relatively straightforward. I guess, again, the key thing here is that there has been a subtle UI and UX change. We can click here from the staffing and actually allocate staff in bulk directly to this project. And we can then go into the individual tasks. So this is the parent job level we see here that we can tick, untick people to. We then have the tasks that are there. Now look, because I've got this particular these particular items here, this shows me that I can actually allocate the start and due date there. Now, again, guys, this is a beta, so this is going to be updated and we'll see future developments of this coming through. But again, similar to the old view as well, we'll have our tasks listed at the top that are all schedulable. That's another new word for today as well. coming up with the new words today, and we're coming back into that date range view. So you'll notice I had to scroll quite a bit then, and that's because I selected the entire year view. If I just did this month, that would actually pre-populate and come into that nice little window there to see how it's already pre-filtered back into today's date. We can see what's there. We can see that strategy, the start date was the 17th. I can click and drag that. So again, really thinking about what task, what's the allocation, how much time has been accumulated to date. We can see the estimated time there, the actual time, the progress as a percentage, and obviously today's date there, which we can see. Now, scrolling down a little bit as well, we can see that we've got some of our milestones. We can see that there's a milestone here that we can click and adjust and pull through. This is all updated. Now we can see this particular milestone can be pulled and pushed. You'll notice here that these are in a red highlight, which shows you that these are overdue. So we come back here and see that this particular client update hasn't been done. We can shift and pivot and go from there. And really, that's really the starting point. So watch this space, everyone. Again, there'll be some bulk completion options as well as some other UI, UX updates to come, I'm sure. But just take note as well. Similar to the other screens and visibility in screens, you can also click select the key columns that are important to you and sort of that visibility there. So again, this is driven by staff and staff access. You obviously have your filter views at the side. So yeah, just as a bit of disclaimer. So watch this space, sign up for the beta if that's you. And let's jump into some Q&A because there's a great question that was there before. Where did it go? I think it was, what's the difference between milestones and phases? That's a really good question. So phases coming in. So again, just giving everyone a chance to get in touch with me while we go through some Q&A with the time that's left. Feel free to QR scan that on the page. Obviously, there's a recording that you can rewatch again, which is great. And then we can obviously catch up one-on-one for a call if you'd like to. That offer's there for those that would like to. Love to connect with as many of you as possible. Now, the question there in terms of differences between phases and milestones, it's a really good question. It's really dependent on your business and requirements. Typically, phases, though, will be used together like tasks and costs. So if you think about an engineer, for instance, if you think about any other professional service or a builder or in construction, you've got multiple stages to a project, which might have different reporting levels as well. So if you think about from an engineering perspective, you might have, say, prelim design or an architect, prelim concept design, construction, post-construction completion might be your phase names. And with each of those, you've got several tasks. So you might have in concept design, you might have principal engineer, senior engineer, etc., with the time budget against those. And conversely, for obviously concept, construction, etc., you might have tasks and times within each of those. So there's an interesting use case for phases. And just think about in your business, do you have multiple project stages or multiple elements of a project where you'd like to group together tasks and costs? There's also added benefit, particularly for those types of businesses that want to build out their budget in detail, say for 3 deliverables. It might be, again, prelim design, concept design, construction delivery. They want to build in that quote detail behind the scenes, so tasks and costs. And then when we quote an invoice, that just show what that headline figure is for concept, prelim design, etc. So they're building quote invoices to really pivot and show and hide information. And conversely, when you're doing that at an invoice level as well. So depending on your business requirements, there's quite a bit of configurability there, particularly in that phase view. Just a reminder, particularly when those job templates come. So if you think about an engineer, you might have concept, prelim, design, construction with billable tasks and costs all grouped together under those phases. You don't want to show any of that detail, or you might want to show that detail. But one of the really cool things to do is, reminder, you got your custom print templates and the samples to help you get started there with the merge field references. So if we think about the invoices, see with phases, we can show full detailed timesheets on a page, full phase and phase and subtitles only. So that's no task, timesheets or costs. So that's the example given before where you don't want to show everything to everyone. And conversely, you've got some of those like templates for the quote slide. So depending on your business and requirements, you've got some options there. Now, any other questions before we wrap up? Oh, this is the first time, everyone, that I've actually been on time. Normally, there is quite a bit of an overlap, and I'm getting the nudge to hurry the hell up. So it's been wonderful. Great question came through. Do you have any instructions for builders or people in building construction industry? There's definitely something that the team is focused on is building out that knowledge base article as we speak. And one of the things I've been talking to the guys about is doing more industry specific webinars as well. I do try with particularly with my webinars is to really focus on industry. So those that attended my 30-minute get started quickly last week, I focused on an engineering company. Today's been more of that creative and digital design. Again, business requirements are unique, even with building construction. So I'd really encourage you to block in some time with me. So again, that QR code's there if you need it. Would love to be able to have a bit of a chat through. But using that phase example, particularly builder construction, you got multiple phases. Using phases is exceptionally powerful there in terms of your different stages of a project and the time budgets in each. Building construction, you're say for a builder, you might have design, pre-construction, post-construction, whatever your phases are, completely dependent up to you. Within that, you might have a budget for labourer, builder's time, obviously material budgets that sit underneath each of those stages. There's definitely quite a few configuration items. So again, booking some time with me directly, I see that there's 1 or 2 bookings that have come in already, which is awesome. But yeah, guys, absolutely wonderful connecting. Any other Q&A, please send it through. Send final depending on completing previous phase. Good question came in is how can you set a milestone for accounts to send final invoice dependent on completing previous phases? That's a really good one, and that's a really good workflow question as well. One of the ideas that I have for you though, with that specific question, which is a great one. Thank you, Tanya. So that you're not just creating milestones by default for every job that you do. So when a job's awarded as a job manager, I don't want to come and go, oh, what are all the milestones I have to do? What I'd encourage you to do, even in accounts, is do exactly what I was meaning before, which is our standard job template for invoicing. So we might have depending on the job type, there might be a milestone that's there saying, apply the invoice milestone so that the job manager knows, and again, this is workflow dependent, so just as an example, that the job manager knows that when they finish a project, they've got to put on to say a job state, which can have a notification. The job state could be notify accounts and apply the final invoice template, which has milestones included in there. So that, again, for me, there's a mixture of playing with job statuses. Where can we build a notification? So when the job's ready to be invoiced, we put the status ready to be invoiced. We associate it to the accounts team, which can be, again, notifications going to be applied to an individual, a job manager, or to a team. And that team could be you, Tanya, and the accounts team, or whatever the case is. But then, just as an addition to that, so if we think about those operating processes and procedures, we could have a template that's literally just final invoice job completion template, as an example. And that could be something that the job manager applies or whoever applies based off a notification of a job state. And it could apply to a particular category, job cost actual estimated. And then from there, we might just have some milestones that we touch to it. We don't have to pre-fill all the tasks and costs, but milestones might be, sorry, Tanya, if I can just refer to talk to Tanya about final billing, which is notified within, say, a day, associated to a phase. Is it public or private? A really, really important one as well. So if I'm doing a public, everyone can see it who's associated to the job. If that's unticked, only I will see that. If I'm the person who's provisioning it, whoever provisions the milestone will see it. So particularly, Tanya, if you're the one or the accounts team is one, you can have it public, private, or otherwise. And maybe another one could be sign off from project manager on final invoice. So whatever your workflow is, it's around really thinking about the business workflow and then thinking about things that can work in harmony together. So that great example there that I mentioned was that the job state one, which is, notification based off job state that then goes to the accounts team or to the project team. Say if a job, say a phase of a job's been done. Another one I do in engineering and building construction is that, say, job stage 1 completion has a notification that goes to a particular team. Then when the job status goes to project stage 2 complete, it goes to a different team, and we've got this like dynamic notifications. And based off those notifications, me as the design coordinator for an engineering company or a building construction company, I might go, great, prelim design's been done. I need to then start on concept design. And then from there, I can come in and apply my concept design template, which will have milestones there to complete. For instance, in this one, final billing, every time I apply this milestone now, that's going to roll through. So come in, great, happy with that. Hit save. We'll add in a phase as an example. We'll just call it billing. And go from there. Cool. And then again, every time then we come into a job, we can then apply that at that particular stage. So this is where that applying additional templates comes in really handy. That final invoice template. Was it? Apply and then those milestones come in. There we go. Pretty flowing there. So again, very workflow contextual. That's why it's really interesting when we look at these webinars is around industry specific best practice, but obviously the other question I have is really what is the business problem we're looking to solve? The greatest thing about WorkflowMax is actually enables quite a few options that aren't automatically visible, and that's because it's a highly configurable tool. So there's a little bit of smarts there. If you want some ideas about getting some support in workflow, you know where to find me. Scan away. Thank you everyone for sharing your time with me on a Wednesday. It is always greatly appreciated. Obviously, we've got a very supportive partner community. So if any questions come up, myself or the other team members, including the support team at Customer Success, who's with us today, Dave Linnell, thank you for joining in. Thank you for everyone. Feel free to reach out, watch the webinar again, and we'll see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone.